In this session, we're going to talk about XPath Axes. But before that, let's take a quick look at what we have learned in the previous session. Okay, so in the previous session, we discussed about how locators are used to locate or find an element in the DOM, and XPath is one type of locator, right? In that, we saw how we can work with XPath functions like text, contains, and so on. We also discussed how we can handle exceptions using the try-catch block. Moving on, what we'll do is in this particular session, we're going to talk about another approach using the XPath locator called as the XPath Axes. And in that, we'll try to look at a few aspects like parent, child, following sibling, preceding sibling, descendant, ancestor, and so on and so forth. So let's get started. All right. So till now, what we have done is we have taken an e-commerce application called as NextTrends, and we have successfully tested various functionalities in it, like logging into the application, navigating to the home page, navigating to the products page, and verifying the display of the products, right? So we performed all of these automation tests by applying various concepts in Selenium locators. All right. So in this session, we'll be talking about, for this particular scope, what we'll do is we'll focus on testing the functionality where we are able to select the rating of a product. We are able to locate the rating of a product, and we'll see if it has loaded properly or not. All right. Now, fundamentally, before we actually, if obviously when you want to programmatically interact with any kind of web element altogether, you will first need to locate the element, right? So in our case, we need to locate the element that contains the rating information. Okay. So just think about this. How do we locate an element in the DOM? You see, if we are doing it manually, we would first inspect the element. We'll try to identify the exact element that we are looking for visually, and then we'll check if it is the one or not. But just think about this. When you're actually automating this entire thing, we'll need to specifically tell our program which element to look for, right? So let's see if we are able to find something that's specific altogether. Okay, right. So basically, what we need to understand over here is we have already logged in into the products page. Okay, and here we can see hair dryer, which has a rating of 3.9, minifigures, which has a rating of 3.9, and so on and so forth, right? So basically, let's say if we can find something unique about this particular rating value. Okay, so let's just right click on it, click on inspect, and here we can see that the rating container is basically here, and under this we can see that there's a paragraph with a class rating, and the text value is 3.9. Okay, and let's just say if you want to see what exactly is the rating value or is the paragraph value over here, we'll just right click on it, click on inspect element, and here we can see that this is also another paragraph element with the class name as rating and 3.9. Okay, so what do we understand over here? Basically, in the DOM, there are multiple elements with the same class name, right? So we have multiple elements over here with the same class name, and here the text is also same, 3.9, 3.9, and all. Right, and for the fact they even had the same tag, that is the paragraph tag. Okay, so now the fundamental question is, when everything is same like this, how can we distinguish and accurately identify the particular element? Right, so let's try to understand that. So far we have learned that we can use multiple approaches to locating the elements using XPath, right? We have seen about absolute XPath, we have learned about relative XPath, we have seen XPath functions, XPath Axes, and so on and so forth, right? So in this particular session, what we'll do is we'll learn about the XPath Axes, and we'll try to understand how we can uniquely identify a particular element using this particular approach, that is the XPath Axes. Okay, right. So in Selenium, XPath Axes are used to find elements in an HTML document based on whatever their relationship is with the current node. Okay, so basically what these XPath Axes do is they provide you a way to navigate the document structure relative to a particular context node or the current node. Okay, so before we move ahead with trying to use the XPath Axes, there are a couple of things and terms that we need to understand first. Okay, let's look into them. So just to reiterate, you can think of it like this, right? So an XPath Axis defines the direction or the relationship between nodes. It specifies the path or the direction in which our target node exists relative to the current node. Okay, so just simply think of it like this. Axis basically means direction of the relationship. Okay, so based on this particular concept, there are a few commonly used XPath Axes in Selenium. Okay, so there's the parent axis, which basically selects the parent node of the current node. Okay, then there is the child axis, which selects the direct children nodes of the current node. Okay, then there is the following and the preceding sibling axis, which basically means that we are going to select the sibling nodes that come after or before the current node. Okay, then there is the descendant axis and ancestor axis and so on and so forth, right? So these axes, what they do is they define the relationships and directions between nodes, and they help you navigate and select specific nodes in an XML or an HTML document, basically in the DOM, based on their hierarchical positions. Okay, so that's a really important point to note. So let's start off with the parent axis now. So in XPath, parent is used to identify and select the parent element of the current node. Let's say you're looking for a particular node in the DOM, say the first heading element called the H1 node. Okay, now there's a chance that this H1 node would be present inside a container element, right? So that container element would be considered as the parent node or the parent axis or simply the parent. Okay, to elaborate this further, to use XPath axis, we need to have a starting point in the HTML document. Okay, so this starting point in our context is called as the current node or the context node. Okay, so let's consider another another example. Okay, so we'll take a bookstore application and let's take a look at how exactly it looks like. Okay, right. So all right, so this is how you can see the bookstore. Okay, so here's the URL. qabookstore.ccbp.tech, and here you can see that there is a heading element, a title element over here, and there are 4 cards or containers. Okay, so you have everyday Italian book, Harry Potter book, Xquery Kickstart book, Learning XML book, and every item has its own writer's name, basically a paragraph, another paragraph, and other values altogether, right? So you have the title of the book, other book details, and so on and so forth. Okay, right? Now let's consider this particular bookstore application to understand the concept of XPath. Okay, right. All right. So what we'll do is we'll consider this bookstore application. Okay. So if you break down the entire DOM of the bookstore application, it looks something like this. Okay. So when you talk about a DOM, it's a tree-like structure of the entire HTML document. Remember? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll have the body tag. Inside it, we have a H1 element and a container element. Under this particular container element, we have 4 more container elements under which there are another H1 and so on and so forth. Right. So if you have observed over here, we haven't considered the HTML tag or the head tag over here, because obviously the HTML tag is kind of considered implicitly over here, and the head tag or the head element usually consists of the metadata. And because we have all the elements, all the nodes, etc., defined in the body tag only, and because it's easy to read, we have considered the body tag as the starting point of our reference DOM structure. Okay, right. So let's consider and if you remember, basically we have Harry Potter over here as one of the books listed in the web application. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll consider this Harry Potter element as our current node, this container as our current node. Okay, and if you look at it, though, if you compare this entire thing to our DOM representation, this div element, the green color div element, is basically the one that contains the Harry Potter heading element. Okay, so we'll consider this container element that has the Harry Potter heading as the current element. Okay, right. So basically, as we have discussed earlier, the parent element of the current node refers to the immediate element that is directly containing or wrapping the current node in the DOM hierarchy. Okay, now in this context, if you apply the same description, or if we visually try to identify the parent element, what would it be? The container element that is right above our current node, right? So if you want to do the same in the DOM structure inside our browser, and that too using the XPath axis, we need to follow these kind of steps, right? So we'll first need to identify the current node in the DOM hierarchy, and then we'll need to use the XPath axis to select the elements of the current node. Okay, so what we'll do is to identify the current node in the DOM hierarchy, the XPath axis syntax will look something like this. Okay, so /div. In square brackets, as usual, we mention the condition, where the condition is @category equal to, in quotes, children. Okay, so if you break it down, /div basically indicates that we are selecting all the div elements regardless of their position in the entire document hierarchy. Okay, and the square brackets part specifies a condition or filter for the selection. Okay, so this basically means we are looking for a div element that have an attribute called as category, and where the category's value is children. Okay, and combining these components, the XPath expression will match and select all the div elements that have the attribute category with the value of children, and it helps us narrow down our selection to specific div elements based on this particular condition. Okay, so let's try this out in the DOM itself. All right, so as you can see over here, we have our bookstore Okay, and we'll just try to inspect Harry Potter over here. So when we right click on it, here we can see that h1 class equal to title and all, and here it's parent element. So if you want to basically look at it, the parent element of this particular Harry Potter is basically a container element which has the class called as book and category called as children. Okay, now if you want to type or search for a particular element in the DOM using the XPath or something else, you need to find a searchable field, right? Okay, so for that, what you can do is in the DOM you can click on any particular element, or let's just click on the category equal to children. You need to press Ctrl and F, and here you'll be able to see a small searchable block. Okay, and this is where you'll actually type your entire search query. Okay, in our case, we want to find a particular div element, right? So in the entire document hierarchy, I want to find a div element. And the moment I wrote div, you can see that there are 9 unique div elements found. Okay, we'll have to filter it further, right? So what we'll do is we'll give a square brackets. And what is the attribute value over here? Category, right? So what we'll do is we'll write @category. Okay, so wherever the category, there is a term called as category in the entire DOM, you can see that the 9 elements have become 4. We are filtering it down. Okay, and category equal to, which is the exact element that we want to choose, the Harry Potter container element, right? And what is the category value over here? Children. The previous one is cooking. The next two are web, right? So we need to consider the children element altogether. Okay, so category equal to, let's just use double quotes over here. You can also use single quotes. Okay, so we'll just write children. And here you can see that we have specifically selected a single element, and it is the exact parent element of our current node, right? And our current node is Harry Potter, right? So let's get back. Okay, so we have selected the current element over here, but our objective for this particular case is to select the parent element of this particular element, right? So our current element is basically, our current node is basically the container element that contains the Harry Potter as a heading. Okay, now what if we want to select the next or the parent element of this particular element? What we'll do is we'll have to add something called as /parent :div. Okay, so this basically tells our DOM that we are looking for the immediate parent element of the current node, right? That is the /, the single / specifies that we want to move up one level in the DOM hierarchy. Parent : div selects the parent element of the current node, specifically the div element. Okay, and in XPath Axes, this symbol, this double colon symbol, is used to separate the axis name from the element we want to select. For example, parent : div basically tells that we want to select a parent axis. We want to go immediate / to select the parent element of the current node. And div is the type of node test or type of function that mentions the selected parent should be a div element only. Okay, let's try to apply this in the DOM itself. All right, so here we are, and till now we have seen that the div category equal to children. We have basically selected our current node, right? And on what basis do we move to the parent element? We need to specifically tell it that I want you to go one level higher /, and I want you to find the parent axis where the parent should be a div element. Okay, and as you can see, the moment we wrote this particular statement, it got navigated, it directly moved to the parent element over here, right? So here you can see class bookstore and flex and so on and so forth, right? So if you remove this particular parent part and you just leave it to the children part, we have successfully selected the current node. Okay, and if we want to move a level higher, what do? We give it a /. And which axis are we going to go forward? Higher or lower? Higher, right? So we'll write parent. And here, what we'll do is we'll tell our code, or we'll basically tell our DOM that we are looking for a div type element, a container type element in the immediate parent. And here it got selected over here. Okay, right. So let's get back. Okay, now what we have done is we have successfully selected the parent element. So just to re-emphasize, to write the XPath Axes expression in the DOM, you need to inspect the web page, and in the DOM you need to press Ctrl F, or if you are using a MacBook, Command F to open the search bar. Okay, and a small search bar window will open and it will look something like this. And here you can actually enter your XPath Axes expression and the matching elements will be highlighted. Okay, right. So, and this is how you'll be able to see it. Okay, and here also. So by now we have understood that we can locate the parent axis or the parent node of the current element. Okay, so let's see how we can locate the child axis altogether. Okay, so the XPath axis child is basically used to identify and select the child elements of the current node. Okay, so the child elements are the immediate lower elements that are nested within and directly under the current node in the DOM hierarchy. Okay, so if you apply the same to the DOM structure that we have seen, the child elements for our current node will be the h1 and div elements you see over here. Okay, and obviously the syntax for that will be something like this. Instead of writing /parent so on, we'll write /child ;:star. Okay, let's try this out as well. Okay, right. So what we'll do is we'll just remove this parent/div. Okay, so we need to go one level lower. We are looking at the direct children over here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give it a /. We are basically telling our DOM that we want to go one level lower in the child axis where you can select anything. Okay, so child star. And when I do that, there are multiple elements getting selected over here, right? So one child is the heading element, the other child is another container element, right? So the heading and the container element all together. Okay, let's get back. So now we went into the DOM structure and we opened the search bar, and as usual, we wanted to select the current node. So we wrote a /div category equal to children. And because this time we're looking for the immediate child elements for the current node, we wrote /child ;:star. Okay, and we could see that the relevant elements were highlighted. The h1 element called as title and the child container element called as book details, both of them got highlighted, right? So if you observe, we had used a star instead of mentioning any kind of specific element, right? So basically this asterisk or a star symbol in XPath is used to match and select any element within the given context. Okay, so when you mention this asterisk symbol, it doesn't specify a particular element type or a particular name. Okay, it just says that select everything possible. Okay, so it could be a children regardless of the tag name altogether. That is why when we mention the expression as /div category equal to children /child ;:star, it basically means we are targeting all the child elements of the div element that have the attribute category with the value of children altogether. Okay, now let's say if you want to specifically select an element, let's say h1, we can mention the value h1 instead of star so that it will select only the h1 child element. Okay, let's try this out as well. All right, so here instead of let's say star, let's just say we want to select the h1 element. Okay, let's replace star with h1, and here you can see only one element is selected, and that too the relevant h1 element. Okay, let's get back. Okay, right. So moving on, let's talk about how to locate. So till now we have discussed about how to identify or locate the parent and child elements. Let's now talk about how to locate the following and preceding sibling elements altogether. Okay, right. So in the context of XPath Axes, siblings are the elements that are at the same level as the current node and they share a common parent altogether, right? And the XPath Axes following -sibling is used to identify and select the sibling elements that come after the current node. Okay, so let's say if you apply, for example, if you apply the same thing to our reference DOM structure, these two div elements, the container elements that come after the current node, they are the following siblings altogether. Okay, so following -siblings basically means the elements that come after the current node. Okay, right. So to identify or to actually locate those particular following sibling elements, if you apply the same concept to our bookstore DOM, what will happen is we'll have to write /following -sibling ;:star. Okay, right? Let's try this out. Okay, so instead of writing this child and all, we need to find out the following sibling, which is basically xquery kickstart and learning XML containers, right? So what we'll do is we'll say that we want to check out the next immediate things, and we want to write the following -sibling. Okay, following -sibling ;:star. Select everything possible. Okay, so here we can see that there are two following siblings. There are two particular container elements that come after the current context container element. Okay, right? So both of the following siblings are the container elements that come after the current element altogether. Okay, let's get back. Now, so you can see the next one as well, right? So as we have written it over here, when we write following -siblings ;:star, it basically selects every possible container element that come after the current element. Okay, so as you can see, the first one was highlighted and the next one was highlighted as well. Okay, so there's also another concept called as the preceding sibling. To elaborate, in the context of XPath Axes, preceding hyphen sibling is used to identify and select the sibling elements that come before the current node. Okay, just think of it like this. If you take the current node, following sibling is the element that comes after the current element. Similarly, preceding sibling is the element that comes before the current element. Okay, so if you apply the same thing to our DOM bookstore application DOM reference, it is this particular container element. Okay, so you can see a particular container element highlighted over here, right? So that is the container element that we are looking for. Okay, and the syntax is pretty straightforward, right? Instead of writing following hyphen sibling, we'll write preceding hyphen sibling double colon star or asterisk symbol. Okay, let's try this out as well. Okay, so here what we'll do is, instead of writing the following hyphen sibling, we'll write preceding. Okay, preceding hyphen sibling, and let's say we want to select everything possible. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give it a double colon, and we'll just simply write star or the asterisk symbol. Okay, and here you can see that there's only one preceding sibling over here, right? So the container element that comes before our current element, it has been highlighted. Okay, right. So let's get back. All right. So moving on, let's talk about another type of XPath axis called as the descendant. So in this context, the XPath axis descendant is used to identify and select all the descendant elements of the context node. Okay, so remember, the context node or the current node, both these words can be used interchangeably in this scenario. And our current node is the container element which has the text called as Harry Potter. Okay, now the descendant elements all include all the kinds of different elements that are nested within the current node at any level in the DOM hierarchy. Okay, it does not just limit to the immediate children. Just think of it like this. When we say descendants in XPath, it encompasses or covers all the children and the grandchildren and any other lower levels of nodes in the hierarchy. Okay, now when you apply the same concept to the DOM of the bookstore application, the descendants for the current node would be this H1 element, the container element, and the elements that are under the child container element. Okay, right. And the syntax for that is pretty straightforward, right? So forward slash descendant double colon star. Okay, the asterisk symbol. So let's try this out as well. Okay, right. So here, instead of writing the preceding sibling, we want the immediate descendants, right? So what we'll do is we'll write descendant, okay, and double colon, we'll give the asterisk symbol over here. And as you can see, we know that this particular container with the category called as children, it has two different child elements, and this child container has three other paragraph elements altogether. Right. So when we just look over here, there are a total of 5 elements altogether. The first one is the heading element. The second one is the container, which is the child. And then the grandchildren, this paragraph, and the third one. Okay. So as you can see over here, the descendants of the current node, including the nested lower levels of nodes, are getting highlighted. Okay. So let's get back. All right. So till now, what we have done is we have checked out multiple axes over here. We have learned about parent axis, child axis, following and preceding sibling axis, descendant axis, and so on and so forth, right? Now, let's look into another axis called as the ancestor axis. Okay, right. So in the XPath axis, this ancestor axis is used to identify and select all the ancestor elements of the current node. Okay, so these ancestor elements include all the elements that are the parent, grandparent, great grandparent, and so on and so forth, all the way up to the root node, the HTML node altogether. Okay, right. So this syntax for this will be something like this: forward slash ancestor double colon asterisk symbol or star. Okay, and let's try this out in the code playground or the browser DOM. Okay, right. So here what we'll do is we'll delete the descendant part. We'll write ancestor. Okay, and we'll just put double colon and the star or the asterisk symbol. Okay, so it went all the way until the HTML root node, and from there we can see that there's the body, and then there's the bookstore called as the main major parent container, and that is the ancestry we can see. Okay, so if we are looking for a specific ancestor, we can mention the specific tag name as well. Okay, right. So all right. So till now, what we have understood is we have understood the core concept of XPath axis, right? So there one more approach in using XPath locator to accurately locate a particular element. Okay, and when we say axis, we are essentially talking about the direction or the relationship of the target element or whatever node we are talking about with respect to other elements, so that you can accurately locate it, right? Always remember, axis is the direction of the relationship. Okay, and some of the most commonly used XPath axis that we have seen seen is the parent axis, child axis, following and preceding sibling, descendant, ancestor, and so on and so forth, right? So on the whole, these XPath axes, they provide a way to navigate and locate the elements based on the relationships within the document structure, okay? And they help us target a particular element in a very precise manner, okay? Now, let's take our e-commerce application and we'll apply the same concept to look at the rating element, okay? In the usual case, what we'll do is to test the product rating functionality, we'll have to first create the project, then we'll have to write the test for login functionality, navigate into the home page, navigate into the products page, verifying the display of the products, and so on and so forth, right? But instead of that, what we'll do is we have already provided you with the initial code for the reading material, okay, right? So initial code in the reading material, and you just need to simply click on the link in the reading material to download the initial session, okay, right? And once you download, you just need to extract the downloaded zip, open the project using IntelliJ. All right, and in the given initial code, we'll have the code to perform different kinds of the tests for login, homepage navigation, and navigating to the products functionality. All these kind of tests will be written over there, okay? And basically, this is how our initial code will look like, okay? Let's try this out once. All right, so here we are in our code, okay, and this is how our initial code will look like. Do not forget to add the path to your Chrome driver, okay? This is really important. So you need to first add the path to the Chrome driver, and only then you can execute the code, okay? Let's run this once. So we'll just right click on it, click on run, and we'll be able to see. All right, so the browser opened, it began to log in, and we were successfully able to have all the different kinds of tests all together, okay? Right, so let's get back. Okay, now we basically executed our initial code and we could see that all the previous tests that we have written so far have been executed successfully. Okay, now let's coming back to our session objective, we want to locate the product rating using the XPath axis, and we want to see if the rating that has loaded in the automation browser window is exactly matching 3.9 or not. Right. So for that, we already have the expected rating as 3.9, right? We have already seen that. Okay. So we need to write our code for it inside the if condition. We'll just simply define a new string called as expected rating. We'll assign the value of 3.9 to here. Okay, right? So we need to write our code inside the products condition, okay? Because only if there are products displayed on the page, only then we'll be able to locate them, right? So we'll write the code for it as string space expected rating equal to 3.9. Okay, right? Let's try this out. All right. So here, if you see, we have an if condition saying if the product size is greater than 0, which basically means if the products are loaded, then it should display that the products are displayed successfully on the products page, right? So what I'll do is I'll just add another line over here saying string. Okay, so let's say let's call it the expected rating. Okay, so we'll write expected rating equal to, in double quotes, we'll give it the value as 3.9, because if you observe over here, let's just close this off, and if you see over here, the rating value is 3.9. Okay, right? So if you look at it over here, let's just remove these things, and the string expected rating is 3.9. Right? So we have basically added our expected rating over here, right? So in order to find the rating of a product using XPath, we need to first identify the current node, right? Okay, and we need to and for the sake of our understanding, we can use the unique H1 element with the text minifigures as our current node. Okay, if you remember in our DOM, we basically had a particular H1 element called as H1 class equal to title, which had the value or text value as minifigures. Okay, so we'll be considering that as our current node altogether. Okay, right? And to how do you look at this using the XPath? We just use the XPath functions, right? So let's see if we are actually able to locate the H1 element that has the text minifigures using this particular expression. Okay, so // H1, and the condition is where the text function has the value called as minifigures. Okay, let's try this out. Right, so here you can see that we are in the DOM, okay, and we want to identify this particular minifigures element, right? So let's just inspect, and we can see that the class equal to title minifigures. All right, and as usual, if you want to run a particular XPath expression in the DOM, you just need to press Ctrl F. You'll be able to see a small searchable window, okay, and I want to tell my DOM to search everywhere in the entire DOM to find an element called as H1, where the condition is that the text inside should match let's just give single quotes, and here we can see that it is minifigures, right? So let's just write minifigures over here. Figures, minifigures. Okay, right? So here we are able to see that we are specifically able to select and identify the unique element with the h1 class equal to title, where the text matches minifigures. Okay, right? Let's get back. Okay, now basically we could validate that we were able to use the expression to locate the required element in our e-commerce website's DOM. Okay, so let's apply the same thing to our code as well. Okay, let's go to the IDE. Alright, so here we have already defined the string expected rating equal to 3.9. Now we want to select the product where the text is minifigures, right? So with the text called as minifigures. Okay, now how do you do that? You use the web element, right? Okay, so we use the web element class. Let's call it the product rating element. Let's call it the product rating element, right? And how do we identify this? We tell our Chrome driver to find an element by the locator using XPath, where the condition is whatever we have already written over there, right? So what we'll do is in double quotes, we'll write double slash. We want to find the h1 element. The condition is text function should actually grab the value called as minifigures, right? So minifigures, okay, right? Don't forget to give the semicolon, and let's see if the element was located properly or not. Okay, so for that, we'll just write another print statement over here. We'll write system dot out dot println of. We'll just simply print the text. We'll use the get text method to print whatever text is grabbed in the product rating element. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll write the products rating element dot get text off. So basically the get text function, the method, what it does is it identifies this particular element and grabs whatever text is visible to the DOM. Okay, right? Let's just run this code and we'll see what happens. Okay, right. All right. So here you can see that we were successfully able to locate the exact minifigures element. Okay, right. Let's get back. So basically, we have successfully selected the current element as the h1 element, which has the text called as minifigures. Okay, and if you check it out, this is how its corresponding DOM looks like. Now, if you want to navigate from the current element or the context node all the way to the rating element, how would you do that? Let's see how we can do it manually. Okay, right. So if you look over here, we have our particular DOM, right? So here is the element. Let's just inspect it again. And here we can see that there is a class rating 3.9. Okay. Now our current element is this one, minifigures. So we'll have to find, we'll have to go down a little. Okay. We'll have to identify this particular brand, another container, and under that container, there's another container in which there is a paragraph element called as rating, right? So we'll have to go a couple of levels down. Okay. Let's get back. All right. So basically, to replicate it like a tree, this is how the DOM of our element will look like, right? Right. So the green box, the h1 is our current element. And if you look at it, the parent element is the anchor element A, right? And there's a preceding sibling called as img. Then there are two following siblings called as paragraph and div elements. Okay. And under the second following sibling, the container element, there are a few subnodes or descendant nodes, right? In those things, there is another container element. And finally, there's a paragraph element called as P with the value 3.9. Right? So the question now is, how do we navigate over there? Right? Okay. So there are several ways. So in Selenium, in this particular context, there are several ways to find the product rating element, right? The first option will involve navigating to the parent element of the current node and then using its descendants to find all the potential child elements of that parent element and accordingly going. Okay. The second option involves navigating to the following sibling of the current node, basically the next node, and then we'll use its descendant access to find all the potential child elements with the following sibling. Okay. And then we'll choose the one that we need. And ideally, the best option to use depends on the specific structure of the DOM. Okay. So if you see like this, if the rating element is a direct child of the parent element, then the first option would obviously be the best choice. However, if the rating element is a descendant of the parent element, then the second option is the best choice, right? Let's try to understand this in a better way. Okay. So in our case, we can directly select the following sibling div element and then access the product rating element, right? So we'll have to go 2 levels down over here. So we have the minifigures as the current one, and then there are 2 following siblings over here, wherein one of the following sibling, the container element, has 2 levels down, and under the second level, we can see the rating element over there. Okay, right? So basically, to locate the specific container element, we can simply add / following hyphen sibling ;div, right? So let's see if this corresponding container element is selected or not. Okay, right. So we'll just quickly go to the browser, and here you can see that text equal to minifigures is there. Okay, and we want to select the following hyphen sibling, where the condition is we want to select the second div element, right? So if you look at it, we have a paragraph, we have another div element. So under the following sibling, we want to select the div element, and you can see that the div class equal to product details is identified over there. Okay, right? So what we'll do is we'll apply the same to our code itself. Okay, and how do we do that? We just need to add the / following hyphen sibling and ;div to our code, right? And we need to add it inside the web element product rating element part. Okay, right? Let's try this out. So we'll just go over here, and we can see that we have written already minifigures we have written over here. Okay, so we'll just write / we want to identify the following hyphen sibling, and the condition is as in which particular element to choose is we want a div element. Okay, right? So let's run the code and see what happens over here. Okay, let's run the code. So the browser opened, it got loaded, and here we can see that there are 2 text values over here, right? So let me just adjust this a little bit. So as you can see over here, we selected the container element, and there are 2 outputs over here, right? The price and the rating part. Okay, so basically, if you observe the DOM, there are 2 paragraph elements in the following sibling container element that we have selected, right? And we apply the getText method to get the text. Okay, when we do that, it will return all the combined visible text values of the element and all of its descendants as well, right? Always remember, when you're programmatically trying to validate things, you need to be very, very, very specific and specifically tell our program which particular element to locate, right? So now we'll need to access the product rating element, right? So to modify our code, we'll basically have the following hyphen sibling, and we'll write the div container, right? And then what we'll have to do is we'll have to specifically identify the paragraph element which contains the class. We have basically selected the container element, and under that we want to specifically search for a particular value called as class equal to rating. We need this particular paragraph element which has a class called as rating. Okay, right? So what we'll do is we'll just add p with the condition where the class, we need to specifically mention the attribute, so we'll use @class equal to, in single quotes, we'll just write rating. Okay, and when you do that, we are specifically able to select this particular value, the rating value. Okay, right? So let's add this into our code as well. Okay, let's just copy this part, this related part. Let's just copy it, Control C. Okay, and we will be able to actually add it into our code. Okay, right? So here, what we'll do is, in addition to this div element, we just need to add the p@class equal to rating, right? So what we are basically telling our program is find a particular h1 element where the text matches minifigures, consider this as the current node, and then check for the immediate following sibling, and that too a div container element where and under that find out a paragraph element which has a class called as rating, right? So you are specifically telling which element to choose and how to choose it. Okay, let's just run the code and see what happens. Okay, so the browser is loaded and everything is going as expected. And here we can see that the rating has been identified as 3.9. Okay, right. So let's get back. Okay, right. So in the code, we have added @p /p, and in the condition we have mentioned @class equal to rating, right? They're basically asking our program to select the following sibling called as div. From that, we have asked it to choose all the potential paragraph elements /p, and based on the condition that the class name should have the value rating @class equal to rating, right? Okay, so we have been able to successfully locate the required element using the XPath Axes. Right? Okay. So the next step is to programmatically validate if that is the correct one or not. Okay, and to do that, we just need to add the text grabbed from that particular element into another variable called as rating, and we just need to compare it, right? And we know the condition. If the expected rating matches the collected rating or whichever gathered rating, we can simply print it, right? Okay, so let's try this out as well. Okay, right. So here we can see that we have been successfully able to print out this particular product rating element, right? So instead of printing it, what we can do is we'll just assign it to another value. Okay, right. So we'll just, string, let's call it as, let's give it a string where we'll just give it the name called as rating. Okay, right. So we'll just call it as rating equal to the product rating element dot get text. Okay, right. So basically what we are trying to do is we want to give the get text value from the product rating element into the rating field. Okay, or variable basically. All right. And here we just need to write another if condition. Okay, we'll write if the condition is the expected rating dot equals whatever rating we have gathered. What we want to do is we just want to print a simple statement saying system dot out dot println saying that the rating is 3.9. Okay, so we'll just write rating is 3.9. Okay, and if it does not get printed, which means there's a mistake somewhere or the rating has not been loaded altogether. Okay, let's just run the code. Okay, so we can see that the program has run and we were successfully able to identify that the rating is 3.9. Okay, let's get back. Okay, right. So basically, we have successfully located an element accurately using the XPath access. And finally, we just needed to add the quit method, which is kind of the basic. And to close the browser, we just want to add the driver.quit method. Okay, right. And on the whole, in today's session, we have learned about the XPath access.